Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Oklahoma wheat producers are trying their best to get wheat planted amid weeks of lingering dry conditions. We begin today with SUNUP's Curtis Hare and our OSU Extension small grain specialist, Dr. Amanda Silva.
The hour's getting late and the land is for sure dry, but Amanda, you're going to go ahead and go out and plant some forage trials out in these research plots.
Yeah, if you see in the forecast, it's been weeks since we haven't seen a significant amount of rain in the state. Look at the plant of available water in the Mesonet website. It's really low, so we really need a rain. And so right now we just made a decision to dust it in some wheat and pray for the rain by the end of the week.
So you mentioned making a decisions for our dual purpose producers and who have those systems. You know, they are facing some decisions right now, whether to dust it in or wait for a rain.
Yeah, and those decisions, they are farm by farm call that producers just need to make based on the source of risks that they are willing to take. There is this chance of dusting and hoping for the rain, but there could be a risk that we don't get enough amount of rain, or we get enough amount of rain to germinate the seed but not to sustain the seedling, so that could be something, or we wait to plant after the rain. So those are just decisions that producer will need to make based on their source of risk they're willing to take. And
waiting for after a rain, there's also considerations that producers need to take because of the available forage that their livestock are going to have able to graze.
Yes, and that is an issue right now because the more we wait, drier it is. We don't get enough rain. We delay our planting, delay germination, and reduce our forage yield potential for sure.
What are some things they need to consider when they're actually planting?
I think the main thing to think about is the depth. I'm comfortable with 0.75 to 1 inch as far as depth. I know here we don't have many issues with winter kill like the northern states. I would be a little nervous of going too shallow, so that's just my thought. I know some producers try to plant some, the ground is really hard and they're not even able to get it in the ground. So and so those are the cases that maybe waiting for the rain is the best solution.
Amanda, the last time we talked to you, you had some great info about seeding rates and a lot of aspects that go into planting. But for the producers who are going to put off, for grain only systems, put off planting until maybe November, does the seeding rate change at all?
Yeah, usually we recommend increasing the seeding rate the more you get out of that optimal window, just because plants won't have enough time to tiller and develop before that winter come in. And so, but those are decisions hopefully they will have to make later on. We've seen some benefits also from having seed treatment. And also just keeping in mind that seed treatment, we have seen some benefits from having it, especially for fungi diseases and helping the wheat to have a good establishment and a good start.
Well, hopefully a lot of producers throughout the state saw some rain this past week, and we'll check back in with you in a couple weeks just to see how the situation's unfolding. All right, thanks, Amanda. Dr. Amanda Silva, small grain specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. It's not uncommon for Oklahoma temperatures to seesaw back and forth from week to week. This past week, we were on the cool side of the seesaw. Average daily temperatures shown by the blue line were several degrees below the long-term average, indicated by the dark fill. Wheat planting is just around the corner. The average wheat variety tends to germinate best with a soil temperature between 54 and 77 degrees. At Mesonet, we utilize probes at 2, 4, 10, and 24-inch depths and under both bare and sod-covered soil to determine soil temperatures. That brings up the question, which one should I follow to determine when to plant? Bare soil tends to fluctuate dramatically with sunshine. You can see this by the brown line indicating 4-inch temperatures at El Reno. The 2-inch depth also tends to change fairly rapidly with weather changes. Therefore, we typically advise to look at a 4-inch depth and look at the 3-day average map like shown here from Wednesday to make decisions. Using bare or sod may depend on your farming practices, clean till or no till. While we might be close to wheat planting temperatures now, next week's return to hot, dry weather will definitely heat soils back up for a while. Gary's up next with a focus on rainfall.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, it might seem strange, but even though we've had quite a bit of rain over parts of the state over the last week, we still had some worsening conditions on the drought monitor report. Let's take a look at the latest map and see where we're at. Well, the real worsening comes up in the Oklahoma Panhandle, in the western Panhandle, parts of western Texas, and in much of Cimarron County. We did see those D0 conditions, or the abnormally dry conditions. So not drought yet, but they did start to pop up in that region of the state. We had a little bit of improvement down in southeastern Oklahoma, a little bit of improvement up in northwestern Oklahoma, but the rains just happened to barely miss parts of those regions. So we'll have to see what we get coming up next week. Hopefully we can start to pound some of that drought out in these new locations. The worsening conditions do show up just a little bit on the latest topsoil moisture report from the USDA. We see another 3% of the state added to the percent short to very short for the topsoil moisture. So at 39%, again, not too bad for this time of year, certainly better than some of our neighbors, but we do need some rain to keep those numbers from going up too much further. Now, speaking of the rainfall that went into that new U.S. drought monitor map, we do see some really good totals down across southwestern Oklahoma, west central Oklahoma, and in a broad region of southeast Oklahoma. Just happens that the part of the state down there where the drought conditions are moderate, the heavier rains just happen to miss that region. So when we start to look down in that area, we do need some of those darker greens and the yellows and reds start to show up. Hopes for rain continue to increase as we get into the last week of August. We do see greatly increased odds of above normal precipitation across Oklahoma for that period, especially across the northwestern part of the state. So hopefully some of those rains can hit some of those drought areas up in that region. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We're joined now by Dr. Amy Hagerman, our ag policy specialist. Amy, I understand there's some new information about drought assistance.
Yeah, we've had some really droughty weeks here in Oklahoma lately, and USDA has several programs for drought assistance, especially for our cow-calf producers and other kinds of livestock that are dependent on grazing and forage. The first one is the Livestock Forage Program. This is a familiar program to us here in Oklahoma. We've used it before, and it really comes down to those weeks in D2 drought, 8 consecutive weeks in D2 drought, or any number of weeks in D3 drought or greater determines what your payment level is going to be under that program. Currently, we have 19 counties in Oklahoma that are eligible for this program. However, because drought conditions are continuing to evolve here in the state, we may see more counties that are eligible. So if producers feel like maybe they fall into those drought categories in their county, then I would encourage them to contact their Farm Service Agency office if their FSA office hasn't already contacted them.
And we can show those counties on our screen. It's mainly the western half of the state, but as we know, these conditions change week to week. So kind of do your homework, ask some questions, and then move forward.
Yeah, it's mainly up in the panhandle of the state, and then counties that come down into that southwestern part of the state, you know, where we do historically experience more drought. But as Wes covered in his segment, we may see that start to move through the state as conditions evolve.
So the best bet is to kind of do your homework and then check with the FSA office, right?
Absolutely. We also have a new program for this year. It's an expansion of an existing program, Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish, but this time we're just talking about the livestock. There is a new program where they will pay transportation costs for hay that has to be brought in for those livestock that are dependent on grazing. Again, talk to your FSA office about exact eligibility requirements. It does, again, depend on those weeks in drought.
And that sounds like a good benefit. Of course, that transportation cost can add up very quickly.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else policy-wise on your radar that we may need to keep in mind?
So again, kind of coming back to drought, coming back to natural disaster, there has been some discussion and some authorization for expanding the WIP Plus program. That's the Wildfire Hurricane Indemnity Program Plus. That plus includes drought. So for 2019 and 2020, we saw an expansion of that program to include drought payments, and there is some potential for that to be reauthorized for 2021 drought. It also has the potential to be reauthorized for that polar vortex that we experienced back in February and that extreme cold weather. Sometimes these drought programs work that way, where there's a little bit of a delay in when the program eligibility is announced. We haven't seen any final rules on this yet. We haven't seen USDA make any announcements on it yet, but it's just something to keep on the radar.
Is there a website that people can check every so often so they can stay up to date?
Absolutely. So the www.farmers.gov site always has the latest information and the latest updates. Specifically for the LFP program, the Farmers website has maps, it has the lists of counties with eligibility, and it has those payment rates that individuals can look at.
Great. Sounds like a good place to start, too. Thanks a lot, Amy. And for a link to the website that Amy mentioned, go to sunup.okstate.edu.
Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to Cow-Calf Corner on SUNUP TV. As those of you know that have been following us the last few weeks, we've had a multi-part series going on talking about cow management and some basic measures we can take on our cow herd at this time of year as we wean calves. Among the things we have talked about collecting on our cow herd this time of year would be mature weights and taking a look at body condition scores as we think about forage budgeting and going into the winter and looking at what kind of a hay supply we might need. We're joined this morning by Dr. David Lalman, and Dr. Lalman has done some trials where we've taken a look at those two things and their impact on forage intake. So Dave, with that, what can you tell us about the impact of mature weight and body condition score on cows?
Okay, well, as you would anticipate, bigger cows eat more. I think everybody assumes that's going to happen. And one recent project we conducted there at the Range Cow Research Center, we purposefully sourced a group of registered Angus cows so that we would have all the genetic information to go with them, but a source of cows that had a real wide range of mature weight, anywhere from around 1,100 pounds to a little over 2,000 pounds. What we discovered was that if you feed a lower quality diet, like we'll say low quality grass hay, each 100 pounds of cow weight resulted in about 1.4 more pounds of forager hay intake. If you fed a really nice quality diet, something similar to lush spring forage or lush spring grass, they could consume up to 1.9 pounds more feed per day or forage per day per 100 pounds of additional cow weight.
So what's the impact of body condition score that we expect to influence intake?
So there's a little bit of information in the literature on cow size. There's very, very little information in the literature on body condition or body composition. So that was really interesting to look at. We didn't maybe have quite as wide a range of body condition as we would like compared to cow size. Nevertheless, as you would expect, really fleshy cows consume less per day compared to a thin cow. You would think that the Mother Nature's feedback mechanism would be telling a thin cow to consume more, and sure enough, they do seem to have more drive, more appetite to consume more forage regardless of the quality. And so bottom line is Mother Nature sort of puts her foot on the accelerator in thin cows, and they could, if it was a high quality diet, they could consume up to 4 pounds more per day per 1 unit of body condition score. If it was a low quality diet, like we'll call it average to low quality grass hay, they could only consume about 1.6 pounds more per day, per unit of body condition score. So I looked at it as, thin cows, but if you look at it the other way, Mother Nature kind of rides the brakes on the really fleshy cows. And, the natural feedback mechanism is just telling her that you can probably back off on forage intake. And sure enough, it works that way because, the really fleshy cows consumed about 4 pounds per day less. It was a negative relationship. 4 pounds per day less on the high quality diet, 1.6 pounds per day less on the low quality diet. So it works in both directions.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you joining us this week and appreciate you all being with us on Cow-Calf Corner. We'll continue this series on cow management next week. I hope you can join us then. Thank you.
There is a deadline looming for an upcoming land leasing survey. OSU Extension's Roger Sahs tells us how this survey helps landowners and producers.
Just a friendly reminder that those producers that have received a custom rate survey in the mail, you're still encouraged to fill them out and send them back. The deadline is October 8th. And so if we haven't heard back from you by about the second week in October, you'll probably receive a phone call from USDA NASS asking you to supply whatever relevant information that you might have for that survey. And that information really is important to us because it does provide those going market rates for those farm and ranch operations. And it is of great interest to those producers that are performing that work as well as those that are hiring that work done. If you're thinking about, for instance, do I buy a hay baler or do I have somebody to bale that hay for me? Well, you can compare, those going market rates for, say, round baling, and you can compare those costs to, say, owning and operating a hay baler. And so at least one piece of the puzzle we can supply for you, and then you can compare that to those ownership and operating costs that you might experience in operating that particular piece of machinery.
Well, it's been a few months since we've gotten an update from our fruit and nut specialist, Becky Carroll. And Becky, the last time we spoke with you, pecan growers were facing a lot of challenges with backworms, the winter storm back in February. So what's the situation like right now?
Well, we've still got a few challenges, and we're getting closer to harvest time, which that's a good thing. One thing that I'm kind of concerned about is the wildlife pressure this season. Since there's not a lot of acorns and things in the woods for all the critters to eat, I'm afraid they're going to be in the out here in the orchard trying to get really stocked up for their winter time.
And that's like wildlife. That's squirrels and honestly wild hogs as well.
Oh yeah, we've had a few out here in the orchard, and the squirrels are busy. The crows have moved in, and they say one crow or one squirrel can take about 1 pound of nuts a day, and with the price of pecans, that's a pretty good detriment to your pocketbook there. And there's never just one crow. They always come in and land on a tree and it's covered. So they can be taken quite a bit in one day.
There was some forecasted rain. Hopefully a lot of producers in those areas got rain recently, but it's been super, super dry. How's that impacting the crop?
Yeah, it really can cause a couple of different issues. If the rain didn't hit everyone, it can cause some issues with that final fill on the pecan. And so in that time in August and September, we really need about 2 inches a week to fill out those nuts properly, especially on our big improved pecans. So if they don't have irrigation, they're really missing a lot of that irrigation and rainfall. And so we will have kernels that aren't filled out completely if they're not irrigating, or at harvest time, some of those shucks, if they don't have enough water, they may not even open up properly. So they need water to expand and open those shucks.
And as we know, pecan growers, the time frame for harvest, is different depending where you're at. So do producers still have time if we do start to get some timely October rains, as we're known to do in the state. Is there still kind of a window where that can help producers?
Oh yeah, it will help definitely. And so a lot of our pecans may ripen a little bit later, and so that will help with that end fill, go ahead and fill up that kernel part. And then it'll also help with that shuck opening as well.
And out here we can see that there are some scab issues. Is there anything else that's growers are really keeping their eye on?
Well, scab, it's a little bit too late this season, but and a lot of our disease management is something that we consider earlier season problems. But we may have some problems with scab, and that may have some issues with those shucks opening as well. But they need to really watch for stink bugs and leaf-footed bugs, because those can still be feeding on those nuts even when the nuts are on the ground. And so if they're seeing those, they may need to consider treating for those stink bugs or leaf-footed bugs. And then also, if we get a big rain, we may have a really late flush of weevil come out. But normally we see weevil peak kind of in September.
For the wildlife though, is there, I know a lot of growers, they'll use propane cannons to scare off those crows and squirrels. But what are some other type of management things that that producers can consider?
Well, the cannons, those whiz bangs, those things are all useful. If they want to learn a little bit more about some wildlife control measures, we're going to be offering a pecan webinar October 8th at 1 o'clock, and they can contact me for more information on that. But I'm going to be showing a few of the different ways that we can harass and control, kind of manage those pests.
Alrighty, thanks, Becky. Becky Carroll, Fruit and Net Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like a link for the upcoming webinar she's going to be hosting, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
We're out here again with Dr. Kim Anderson talking about the crop markets. Now, Kim, what's going on?
I think you've got to start with the corn and soybean harvest. They're probably about 20% complete, corn a little more than beans. Then you got winter wheat plantings, both here in the United States and around the world. Market's watching the Russian plantings right now because it's dry in some key areas there. They're talking about having less acres for 22 than 21, so lower production, and that's going to put some stress on our tight wheat stocks. And then you've got some problems with some of the world economies.
So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with China. I think you've got to look on what's going on there. You got a major construction company that's having trouble making its interest payments. It may be going belly up with some other construction companies. That's about 25% of China's economy. It's going to stress that economy, and China is important for trade around the world. You look at what's going on with soybeans. China bought beans and cotton this week, and I think that's an important thing going on right now in the market.
Let's bring it back stateside. What's going on in the U.S.?
Well, you look at wheat. Our wheat prices are around $6.75. They've been wallowing around there for the last 3 or 4 weeks, down 16 cents one day this week, gained most of it back later on. You look at the short run, I believe our prices are on a downtrend, but on the long trend, they're uptrend to sideways, and I think we're establishing a sideways pattern right now with wheat. You look at corn, $5.20, just like wheat. We've been at that price level, above it and below it, but around there for the last couple of weeks. As I said, harvest about 20% done. You've got higher prices this week than last week. Short run trend, I believe, is sideways. Long run trend is down for corn. You look at soybeans. You come in with beans, 18% harvested around in there. I think they're on a downtrend, maybe flattening out. Look at Brazil coming in with a record crop. China's buying most of their soybeans from Brazil right now, but they came in and bought a load of soybeans from the U.S. this week, and cotton's on a tear. Remember last week I said cotton prices were down from 94 to 89. They're up to $1.03 this week. I think most of that's because we've had good, strong export demand, and China is about 2/3 of that export demand.
So with all these high prices, how is that going to affect producers' pocketbooks?
I think producers are going to have higher income this year. However, if you're stretching out to 22, they're driving up prices of metal, buying equipment, input prices are going up. Some Fertilizer prices have more than doubled. You look at fuel prices higher. They're bidding up rent land or land prices and rental prices. So as we go into 22 and these prices hold relatively high, I think income will still be relatively good, but it's not going to be as good as it was in 21.
So with all these high prices for production costs, transportation, all of that, what should producers be thinking about for sales?
Well, price trends can change in a nanosecond, both for the inputs and for the commodities. I think producers have got to concentrate on producing a quality product that the market wants, because if you've got the opportunity like we did in 21 with relatively good prices, we got to have product to sell to take advantage of that price. So looking forward, produce a good product and then stagger it into the market. Don't sell it all at once.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can see us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.